Wham! Talk 1600. You're catching the drift. Conservative talk. Intelligent conversations on local, state, and national issues with Gary Wellings, chief editor of the Current newspaper and Current Online. Join in the conversation at 734-822-1600. And now, your host, Gary Wellings.
Hey, and welcome to The Drift. Thanks for tuning in to catch our drift. Joining me in studio, Ipsy Ed Bonderenka.
Hey, you pronounce that so well.
Bonderenka.
Happy New Year.
I don't spell it very well when I'm trying to email you all the time. It doesn't come out real well, but we're working on it. Well, let's... my little computer is making noise like that. Better turn that off.
It's a pleasant sound.
Yeah. Well, what we do every Saturday on The Drift is go over the news that I put on thedailydrift.com. It's the news
you need to know.
And you can find that at thedailydrift.com. And I put news from around the world, across the nation, and locally that you won't find on the mainstream media. So make sure that you go there, educate yourself, and fight the establishment.
Yes, fight.
Fight it.
You're a news aggregator.
I am a news aggregator to the max. Yes, I try anyways. Well, let's take care of a little business. If you're looking for something to do tonight or tomorrow, Burroughs Roadhouse in West Brighton. It's 5311 Brighton Road. That's west of downtown Brighton there. And you can call them 810-227-6000. Probably always a good idea to see if you're going to make reservations. The food is spectacular. The drinks are great. Eric is normally the bartender. I think Fridays and Saturdays, a great bartender. And it's just a really great atmosphere. It really, really is. It's awesome. So make sure you head out there and check it out. And there's coupons in the Current, COURANT online.com. If you don't get the Current print edition, you can get the online edition. It's always free, folks. You never do better than that, right? It's
Avail
free.
yourself.
Yes, get out there. But they do comedy shows Fridays and Saturdays at 9 p.m. They do Sundays. They do breakfast stuff. So make sure you get out there. 810-227-6000. Tell them that Jim and Russ that you heard it on the Daily Drift or on the Drift radio show.
And you saw their advertisement in
The Current. Yes. So it's a great place.
Please.
Well, the big news locally, anyways, this week, our kind of our front runner for Michigan Senate dropped out this week, and it was Bob Young Jr., who was our former Chief Justice for the Michigan Supreme Court, and he just dropped out. Yeah. And we can talk about some of the reasons why later, but we have two guys that are left in, Bob Carr and John James. And Bob, who's never shy, has called into the show. So we're going to talk to Bob for a few minutes here and let him take advantage of this opening. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bob.
Well, welcome to you, too.
Yeah, well, you're not quitting, right?
How's it feel to be the new front runner?
If you do it right, you design a campaign from the day of the primary or the day of the election, and you work it back. And it's been very hard to sit and wait. But first we had Upton, who was waffling around, and that was just keeping people sitting on their hands, because the old school says you have to have an elected person if you're going to win an election. And that's no longer the case. And then, of course, Bob Young and I, we were at the same meeting at a Christmas party up in Ludington, Mason County up there. And, 3 hours up, be there for a couple hours with 40 or 50 people, 3 hours back. It is a tough grind. And so, there's a lot of things about running for the United States Senate. And for me, the message is stronger than anything else, which keeps us going. But I think we've laid out a really smart strategy, and I think so far we've been right on the ball.
Well, I'll give you this, Bob. Of all the Republicans that I've seen, in the state race, especially for the Senate, Pete Hoekstra did nothing. He was a waste of time. Like Pete, he had the right ideas, but marketing-wise, like most Republicans and like the idiot Michigan Republican Party, have no idea how to market. You, on the other hand, are one of those few guys is out there busting chops, and I'm going to give you credit for that, man, because you are making the effort. You really are. And my question for you is this, because this is how I'm going to base my vote in the primary and in the general election. Are you going to follow the people's agenda and support the Trump decisions Not all of them, because I'm not sure I'm on board with all the Trump decisions either. But are you going to put America first?
Well, absolutely. And let me say this: when I had my radio show called Reality Politics, and it was great fun, and my host's son died suddenly, but I had a saying: if you want perfection, get to heaven. So there is not any bill that's passed that I think is probably perfect. The trick is to know that and to realize that sometimes we're going to have to come back and revisit it. So even our president is probably not perfect. Well, so what, folks? You know, and one of the things that I enjoy is the emails I get and the texts and so on, asking me questions from people who have a passion about this subject or that. And they are real educators, because most of the time when they ask me their question, they're also writing their answer, you know. And so my wife and I thought that Trump was going to win the first day of the election when he went to run, because he had street smarts. And I think that's very, very important to know what people are thinking. If you know what people are thinking, then, you know, you're way ahead of the game. And he just seemed to have that knack, and hopefully I do too. And so far as fundraising and so on, I've been right on.
Bob, you say if you want perfection, you have to go to heaven. I hear you've been campaigning in hell.
By the way, I was told the other day I need to go to hell and stand in front of the sign.
Oh, I heard you were there. Okay, because it's frozen over, you know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Bay City, Flint.
No, hell is frozen over, and I saw on Facebook. Well, there's someplace else that I heard you were at, and I'm kind of. I want to ask you about this. Did you go to the Lansing reception? I'm sorry, the reception for Andy Shore, who recently won the election as Democratic mayor of Lansing?
I did not.
Okay,
but I had a live video coming over the whole time from Daniel Arnold, I think is his name. And so I did watch it.
Okay, that's why you were mentioned in that post. Okay, I was concerned. I didn't know. I wanted to clear that up.
I wouldn't be concerned, just because, you know what? Sometimes you got to reach across the aisle, right? Not that I like doing that. Not that I like doing that. Well, let me say, anybody's better than any replacement for Burge Bonero was a step in the right direction. No matter,
you can only go up.
You can only go up.
Do you remember his campaign? He was the Mad Mayor.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Now, who came up with that?
I don't know. It's one of those crazy lib Democratic things, but it seems to work for them in so many cases. I mean, look at Debbie Stabenow. She lies through her teeth and keeps getting reelected, in part due to our Republican farmers who keep thinking that she's doing something for them. And all so right. I'm going to tell the Republican farmers across this county of Washtenaw and across the state, stop supporting Debbie Stabenow.
No, well, let me tell you this, because we'll talk about that. I went to the Farm Bureau convention, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and I put posts on my Facebook and the photos and so on. But I've been farming since I was a little boy. One foster home I was in, Dad Carr was the Potato King of Michigan. There is a Potato King crowned every year. I went up to Posen, and there was a Potato King who was a woman in the parade. And I went to boarding high school, and I worked on the farms, and I have an airstrip on the cornfield that my wife and I and another couple own, that I farmed when I was 14. And then all through college, I worked on farms. I worked on beef cattle, chicken, dairy. I became the ice cream expert in the creamery, could have gotten my license and those kind of things. So when I get to the United States Senate, you're going to put somebody back on the agriculture committee that's been doing it all his life. And I have a picture out of the yearbook at the high school when I was about 85 pounds sitting on a tractor cutting green chop. That's out there on Facebook, and so it's going to be hard to argue that I don't know anything about agriculture.
Right. Well, that's great. Good. Well, we've got Joe from Wyandotte calling in, Bob, and he's got a question for you. Derek, can you bring in Joe? I don't want to fiddle with it and hang up on somebody.
That's my job to hang up on Joe.
Thanks. I wanted to ask Bob about how the progress for the debates is coming, because there needs to be a debate, even if Bob Carr has to debate cardboard cutouts of Sandy Penciller and John James, because if they're not capable of having a friendly GOP debate, they are clearly not ready to face Debbie Stabenow face-to-face. How's the progress on that coming, Bob?
Well, would you please get on the tallest building and shout it out, because you are absolutely right. The voters deserve to know about the candidates. And with a debate, as you know, you have an audience, you have television, you have newspaper, you have radio. Maybe you guys will help moderate. And we have asked to do one every month. James absolutely, and his assistant, who I've seen in person, refused to talk about it and have never returned a phone call. Penzler told me flat out, look, I'm financing my own campaign. I'm spending my own money. I don't need a debate. I'm going to win without it because I have enough money. And that was hard for me to stand there and just be civil. And so we did get a request for a debate in March. We have radio stations in Detroit and venues set up. We have them Grand Valley State ready to go and that kind of thing. It's an interesting discussion we had at Republican state meetings, and that was with a couple of these governor candidates talking about, well, why don't you, Bob Carr, as a senator, and we as I guess I came up with the idea, and asked them, and they seemed open to it, have a debate that has the governor candidates and in whatever Senate candidates if we can't get the Senate candidates. Now, back in '96, when I won my primary against $1 million in the 1st Congressional District, my candidate, the other guy wouldn't debate either, and I got, this was great, in Alpena, the TV station, to go ahead and do a debate just with me. And it got more news than just about anything, and I think that's when he lost the election. So I would tell these people to be careful what you do, because Bob Carr and Tom Hadfield, who's just a brilliant campaign director that works for me, and maybe you know Tom, you need to learn about Tom Hadfield, folks. We're going to come up with something, because I think the public do not like people who do not want to just stand out there and take whatever you ask them.
Yeah, well, and Ed and I had just kind of whispered to me, and the same thoughts were simpatico.
Simpatico.
Listen, you can come in, and whether Sandy Penzler or whether John James show up, we'll do a debate right here. Ed and I'll we'll put our questions together for you.
You say if Joe should go on the tallest building. Hey, he just said it on the tallest antenna in Southeast Michigan for conservative radio.
Yeah, so it's, and I'll be honest. So John James, Sandy Penzler, because, I was a Bob Young guy. That was where my vote was. And now my vote is up for grabs. So I can't be any more fair to you and Sandy Penzler and John James. The three of you guys come in here, and, the only reason I'm leaning toward you at this point, Bob, is because you're the only one with guts to get on the radio and get out and talk to people. I have not seen John James. I have seen 0 on my Facebook, 0 on my Twitter from either of those guys.
Bob, when I first contacted you to come on, on the air here for an interview, you've been on twice. I have tried to get a hold of Sandy Penzler. I've tried to get a hold of John James. This is no response. So, hey, we're pro you at the moment because you're pro us.
Listen, here's how basic common sense this is. Coming on a radio show, especially on this station in the populated Southeast Michigan, especially before the primary, because yes, most of our listeners are conservative. This is free advertising, you retard. Get on the radio with us and do your job, because you're not going to beat Debbie Stabenow if you're sitting in a corner crying the blues into a blanket, because get your butt out there. And this is what's wrong with the Michigan Republican Party. They have no guts and no common sense when it comes to putting out candidates and helping them. It makes me sick to my stomach that the people in charge of Michigan Republican Party are so cowardly and ignorant that they can't get their butts out here and do something for the candidates.
Yeah.
All right, pick a date. Pick the date if you want to pick it right now and the time, and start advertising, because we'll be there. I know Tom's listening. So why don't you guys be the first one? And we'll be down.
We'll do that. We'll do that, Bob. You have my promise.
About why they don't want to do radios, because they're so scripted.
Yeah.
And when I decided to run, I had 3 criteria, and the first one was these other candidates are going to be very, very scripted.
Yeah.
And so they are setting themselves up for me to corner them in every different direction.
Yeah.
And they're proving to be exactly that. The second thing, the off side of that is, they got on Fox News, right? And then they get patted on the back and they think they've already won the election. Well, I mean, a few people see Fox News, a few more people than a lot of other places. But listen, I love going on your show. I'd go on your show every day if you would have me.
Yeah.
But that is, so you just pick up the phone.
Okay. Well, here, Bob. I'll tell you what. Here's what we're
advertising. Let's invite in an audience, and let's do it. And I'll be down.
All right. Well, we'll get that scheduled. Joe, did you have one more thing before we let you go?
Yeah, Bob was starting to tell the story about Hell, Michigan, because I gave him the suggestion he needs to go to the Hell, Michigan city limit sign and get a picture next to it of him and say that Bob Carr is the only candidate willing to go to hell and back for Michigan.